Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a bag full of jelly beans and subsiding rage from a day full of Mortal Kombat 11, and you are joining us for episode 3 of the Apex Hour. I am joined today by 2OP Nerf OG. Count is away at St. Jude Live. He's actually going to be coming back onto the show next week, talking a little bit about that. He's over there doing some awesome things. So actually, let me just throw his thing down in the chat. Make sure you go give Count a follow if you're not already. See what he's up to, doing the St. Jude stuff. And we're ready to get rocking and rolling episode 3. We got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. Obviously, State of Apex, but then we're just going to be talking about some of the games that we've been playing, games we're excited about in the coming months. OP, how has your week been, my friend?
It's been good. I've been playing a lot of World War Z.
Nice.
Really enjoying that one. I'm quite honestly a little bit on the burnt out end on Apex. I think I played it too much, and you reach that point where it's like you notice the bad more than the good. So
yeah, I think
trying to divide that time more.
Especially when you're streaming, man. I mean, you're playing, minimum 4 hours a day, right? Like that's just a lot of time to play one game, especially in like the current landscape where I don't know. I think we're just attuned to be able to like turn around and play something else. Back in the day, that was all you had. I mean, so you'd play like this. We used to play the simplest of games for years on end. I mean, a lot of us just did Halo 1 LAN without any patch ever for, 2 years straight while we waited for Halo 2. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. I think that's what a lot of people are like realizing too, that they're just kind of like reaching a point of burnout, and that kind of ties into today's discussion for Apex. So I guess why don't we just dive right into that, because I'm sure we'll just start rambling about it anyway. Kind of like I guess a lot of the discussion going around Apex Legends, its current content schedule, and obviously the letter that we got from Respawn today basically saying, look, yeah, we're like one team and things will be ready when they're ready, and we'll talk about stuff soon. I saw a lot of people kind of taking that as like, oh, they're doing like the Battlefield 5 thing, but I think it's kind of a different situation with Respawn. I think that a lot of people don't really realize how small their team is.
It's a very small team.
Yeah, like they're expecting Fortnite stuff, which Fortnite kind of sets like a dangerous precedent, because I just don't think anybody should shoot for what Fortnite's done. And also I've talked about this in the past, like comparing Fortnite and Apex Legends to me is very odd, because Fortnite brings people back by just adding like stuff, they're not really expanding like this really satisfying core gameplay experience. And I think at the end of the day, people just maybe don't actually care, right? Like I'm over here like, God, this is pretty good. It's not perfect. Lots of things that, I'd like to see them change. We'll talk about that today, but like, I don't know. I'd rather just see the game like expand, even if it takes them like 3 months. It hasn't even been that long either. That's the crazy thing.
No. Yeah, it's been like, 2 months?
It's like going on 3 months, dude. We're not even halfway through the battle pass or through season 1 yet. And like, I don't know. Yeah. It's just like, I get the idea like games is a hobby, but I also think that like in general as like a society, we just consume a lot of media and entertainment, and like there's just, I don't know, I guess in a lot of ways, the demand is starting to be met by companies like Fortnite, even if it's not necessarily with like quality content. So
yeah, I think we're all jaded by Fortnite. We're all jaded by other games, and just like expectations are too high at this point, and then we just need to like sit back and like I think as a whole, people need to sit back and realize the size of their team, like you had said. So they're not going to be able to, dish things out as quickly as Fortnite does. And they don't want to. They want quality over quantity.
Yeah, they don't want to just like, oh, look, guys, we added airplanes.
Yeah.
We put, I don't know, we put like jetpacks in the game for a weekend. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I even see like big streamers. I saw like Josh OG like asking him like, what are you guys going to do to like keep people playing? And I'm just like, well, I mean, and the stuff he listed off to me was all just like, it's not important to me, and that's where I realized I'm definitely in a very different mindset than the average consumer, like I don't expect this game to have all this stuff, and I definitely could care less if it added the things he was talking about, which was just like more challenge things. Like to me, those things are all just kind of, they're what's the word for it, man? They're not like real. They're not actually substantial, they're just like feeding the psychology of like why you keep playing the game, right? It's just this little fixes over and over again. And for me, it's like, I don't know, Battle Royale like already has built-in longevity on the basis that like the RNG, right? And I think that's a thing that people also don't realize when they say like, well, can't you just like take out the random element? And I'm like, well, that's kind of what makes BR, I think, so addictive in the first place.
Yep.
It's got that like almost loot shooter element in like small bursts.
It's a gamble. It's a total gamble.
Yeah, it is. You know, you drop and sometimes you don't and sometimes you do. And even when it's like real bad, like you get a real bad loot drop, if you survive that, then the victory at the end just seems that much more substantial than it otherwise would have. You're just like, dude, we had 2 Mozambiques at the start of that game, and we got first place with 13 squad kills. So it's an interesting time for their team. I was happy to see them kind of talk about that though, especially with like the Fortnite news where, you know, they're like, oh yeah, we're making people work 70 to 100 hours to like grind out content for them. And that's a team that I think has like, you know, I'm pretty sure they're up in like the 300 or 400 for like their team size at Fortnite. You know, they're huge. Respawn's got to be, I was thinking about this yesterday. So the last time I remember looking at Respawn's numbers, I think they were at around 50. That was like post Titanfall 2. And so some of the teams split off, and I'm sure I know they were hiring for a bit. Let's say they even brought on double that. They got 100 people now. That's still a group on Star Wars who isn't working on Titanfall, and a group on Apex. You know, that's just such a small team, man. And I think when they talked about, you know, with speaking like the Titanfall, like getting pushed back thing in the letter today, I think when they originally said that, they were like, oh, you know, we'll have like the time to do that. And they slowly realized like, actually, we won't. You know,
right? Yeah.
Not this year anyway. And I don't know. How do you feel about that? Like, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, like, do you think that they will like at any point we'll still see like more stuff in the Titanfall universe within the next year, or is it gonna be like, like 2-3 year thing at this point?
I was talking about it earlier. Like that was like the sentence that really stuck to me at the end, is like how he pretty much, let me find it. He pretty much said, you know, we have our teams that are working. We're not pulling team members from different games. Like everybody's assigned to their certain game, and that just kind of worried me, because a lot of the faces you're seeing on Apex Legends right now were Respawn.
Yeah, Titanfall, I mean, they're the type, they gotta be, right? Like if they didn't go work on Star Wars, then they were on Apex, and like that's that. Yeah. I understand why, even not just even as like a resource thing, but you know, like when a good team makes a game, I've seen so many people in the industry talk about this, like the most difficult thing that you can do as like a developer is like pull apart a really good team, because then you just don't have like, you know, the cohesion of people like, you know, Tina and all of the devs working on the inside. Like you strip that apart, and then suddenly like Apex could suffer, not just because the team is smaller, but because you don't have like that team mojo anymore, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's I mean, it was nice to read this, nice to read the updates. Like it was reassuring. I was very concerned. I was in kind of a state of mind like yesterday. I'm like, what's gonna happen? I like, you know, there's bugs, there's issues like that, but I kind of was like, it was a very reassuring update from them today.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I really like would have liked to have heard, right? I didn't expect them to come out and like announce like plans or even reveal what's necessarily going to happen with the rest of season 1. I know a lot of people like want that. Like people just want them to like lay things out exactly as they are. But the problem with that is anything changes, and then those people lose their shit.
Yeah.
Like, but exactly. You said, and then they wonder why devs don't want to like, they're like, oh, why are you just giving us the once over? It'll be there soon. It's like, because this is an industry that, you know, does need some discretion. Like you can't expect everyone to have full transparency. You're living in like a very, you know, that's a very ideologic, you know, mindset to be like full transparency. And it's like, it just doesn't work, man. And you as gamers, like, you know, we've proven that the moment somebody's fully transparent, you like shove it down their throat, you know, it gets shoved down their throat. So yeah, that was just like, just to have them come out and be like, listen, this is what we're doing. And also, more importantly, for them to just kind of set the precedent. I think they're one of the first teams to just come out and say, like, we're not going to force our staff into crunch if we don't have to. You know?
Yeah, like, that kills teams.
Yeah, it's something that needs to happen right now. You've got all of these, you know, all of these people who are really upset about, like, the destruction of, like, old BioWare. Oh, this team doesn't exist anymore. That team doesn't exist anymore. And then they wonder why. And it's like, well, the game industry, the people who work there are literally telling you why. They're telling you it's not sustainable because because as creators, they're overworked to the point of, you know, mentally breaking down and then leaving the industry. Like there's so many great devs who just don't do it anymore. I mean, you know, the guy who headed up BioWare back in the day, for example, like after BioWare, he just went and started doing completely different stuff. I always forget his full name, but he was like he had like doctorates in psychology and stuff, and he went off and started doing all this science stuff. It wasn't because he was just like, I'm just like done with, I don't like games. It's because he just got like, burnt into the ground. Like, I would.
And Cliffy B.
Yeah, Cliff Blazinski, he talked about just going through the motions and not just being burnt like from the workload, but being burnt from just the way that, devs do get treated by their audiences and by the people around them. It's just, yeah, man, I don't know. Creating stuff like that's like, it's, like, it's not like it's the only place where you end up having like a very toxic environment and where you're forced to work. Like in general, like we're all overworked, and especially in the United States and like Europe and stuff like that. In most places, like people just work absurd hours. It's just the norm to go into work sick and to grind on the weekends and all that crap. But I think with games, like, as we push more into that, like, we need transparency thing, and you've got just developers being like hunted down on Twitter. They can't even have like their own private Twitter accounts to talk with their friends without a bunch of people screaming at them about, like changes to whatever Pathfinder's hitbox and Mirage's ultimate stuff. Very time, and I feel like a very difficult time for the industry. But yeah,
I can't imagine being them.
I know. It's like I like after 6 years, just barely am at the point where I can deal with the bullshit that people throw at me on YouTube about like a video that I made in, maybe 30 hours max for a really big video, and just imagine like working on a project for 2-3 years of your life just to have somebody just be like, go die.
Yeah.
Like not even criticism, but it's just like, yeah, that blatantness. So yeah, I'm happy they're taking their time on it and they do their thing. People will come back, right? That's this thing. I feel like everybody thinks that like 36,000 viewers like average on Twitch is like a low number, and I'm like, only if you compare it to Fortnite. That's not a small number. That's a huge community, dude.
They're in the top 10 consistently. Like in top 10 on Twitch. That's a big deal.
That's nuts, dude. And that's without anybody big even like playing the game, really. Like Dr. D and them, they've been blabbing off doing whatever and stuff. They're all burnt out because they're always looking for like the god game that doesn't exist.
Yeah, for sure.
No
so
bugs, they just jump from one thing to the next.
Content.
Yeah, they just want something that doesn't exist, in my opinion. Like the way I hear, talk about it, I even like saw Shroud like, I want to go like back to PUBG, and it's just like, yeah, but you were just pissed about PUBG like 4 months ago. And I think they're very reflective of like the gaming people playing games right now, where they ultra commit to something, and then the moment it doesn't offer the same level of fun that it did in the first like 48 hours they played it, it's just all downhill from there. And it's like you said earlier too, it's good. I mean, it's good that you like acknowledge, and you just been playing too much of it,
Yeah, because I wouldn't have noticed any of these issues like the first couple weeks, this honeymoon phase. I was loving it, and then it's just like my mentality changed a bit. And it's like, okay, that sucks. That's frustrating me, and I would have just laughed it off. It's like you just reach that point where it's like, oh, I need to take a break. I'm looking at this. I'm getting salty. Just kind of gotta divide the time better. And
yeah,
I don't know.
I think as humans too, we're not built for like the. I mean, it depends on how the person you are, right? Like I feel like I'm maybe one of those people who doesn't really. I just don't get salty about games anymore, like fighting games, maybe like on a 1-to-1 level, but that's more so because it's like something I'm still really learning at. So the frustration is on a personal level, not really with like the person I'm playing against.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I feel like we're just, we're built for multiple hobbies in a lot of ways. Like, I think it's just healthy for people to realize like, yeah, I should take a break. And even if it's like play a different game, but maybe it's like, just take a break from games in general, Yeah. That's an entirely different discussion. Let's talk gameplay, dude, because I think that's something that's like no one's talking about, right? Everybody's so salty about like content and all this shit, and I feel like no really good discussions around like just gameplay changes. Like I don't even feel like they're getting any feedback beyond like fix the hitboxes, right? Like it's funny how everything, especially for a big game, turns into this hive mind gravitation of like, well, this person, this big person on YouTube said this, so now this is the only thing that makes me angry. Like rather than like, let's actually like kind of talk about the game a little bit. Like, where can we see some cool changes and how could the meta shift beyond like new champions and stuff like that? I don't know if that's something you've been thinking about at all. Oakley.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. I want to see a Mirage rework. As fun as Mirage is, I feel like right now, after the changes to Gibraltar and Caustic, he's like on his own bottom level.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week when we were talking about those two, and I agree. I feel like that's one of those things that, like, I know it takes just as much. It's one of those things that probably takes just as much time as anything else, but I feel like that would be a really cool one, for like for season 2, right? Like coming strong with like, I don't need to see like every single character get reworked, but even just like one, right, and kind of shift the meta. I think that's something that Overwatch tends to do pretty well. Where no, they're not gonna like they're not gonna make two massive reworks. Like you're lucky to get like one rework every 6 months. That's like something that really can, kind of freshens up a legend again, and brings him into the fray a little bit. And I don't feel like his whole kit. I think we kind of talked about. I don't feel like his whole kit needs to be redone. I'm still like pretty stoked with his basic, ability, his basic Mirage. I do think it would be cool to have it replicate what you're doing a little bit more. So if you were like shooting and you deployed it, it'd be like, kind of like a flashing effect that made the holo look like it was shooting as well.
Ooh,
I think that would be really neat, and that's probably something that wouldn't be super difficult, because you just imagine though, like running around the corner and then like holding down your trigger, just kind of like blind firing and then casting it out, and next thing you know, he's like hip firing as he's running forward type deal for a little bit. That could be really cool, kind of add a little bit of extra oomph to him. But what are your thoughts, for like the alt? I feel like we all kind of have something about the alt. How do you feel about it?
The fact that what gets me the most about the alt, because I've been playing him, I have one more win until I'm done with that Wild Frontier Champion badge. He's the last character I'm working on. The other ones I've just flew through. I've been stuck on him for quite some time now, and the more I use the ult, it's great if you pop it like just near cover, because it kind of creates a little bit of deception. They don't really know where you're going to, but if you pop, I mean, you have to like safely pop it or you're in trouble, especially because you can't shoot while you're in it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of clunky. I know like that's kind of their thing though, is they want like a big reset on everything. But I feel like that's the one alt where you almost get like punished, whereas the other ones are just preventing you from being too powerful. It just feels like you get punished with like the reset on it. Yeah, like you said, if you're a good player, I know there's plenty of people out there who totally get fooled by the whole invisibility thing. But I feel like if you played enough shooters, especially if you play this game a lot, you can pick up on him and you can chunk a guy cloaked like pretty easily in this. It's not super difficult. So yeah, I think the alt's just kind of, I don't know. I've heard people say like make it so every single one of the holos is doing something different, like one's crouching, one's standing. I don't think that's going to do anything. I think if they're standing still, you still have basically the same ultimate, The idea that one like crouches and one stands doesn't really change the fact that you have a bunch of holos that stay in one position that always, deploy in the same exact pattern, and then you have this guy who's cloaked crawling out of the middle of them,
Yeah, exactly. It's not confusing.
Yeah, I just don't think it works. I'm almost like, what if the Mirage effect did something different? Like, what if rather than deploying an actual Mirage, like him, the character, it deployed like a Mirage of, I don't know, anything, a fake explosion, like,
like
something
grenade
else.
Indicators,
yeah, grenade indicators, like a smoke screen that is actually like a hollow smoke, type deal. So it's like fake smoke, but it causes like distortion. I just feel like there's a bunch of other different ways they could go with that would make it blend better with the invisibility thing, without getting like real crazy. I already have like my god change, which is just let you deploy 5 separate Mirages manually when you ult and still have you cloak, because then I feel like you can really screw with people and just cast a bunch of them out wherever you want as you're running away. I feel like that works with the movement of it. But
yeah, and that'd be balanced. I can't see a problem with that. That'd be great.
Bag says, how about a Mirage clone you control but it doesn't do damage? That would actually kind of be cool too. Imagine if your alt was more just like the kind of like the RC car in Blackout, where it doesn't do any damage. It's not an offensive item, but you could just like run around until you got like, maybe it even had like health, quote unquote. It could get shot like, for 25 damage before it completely disappeared, and you could use it to like bamboozle people. That would definitely be interesting.
Great for intel.
Yeah, it's like a scouting tool. Yeah. That would be interesting. I'd love to have him do a character like that. I feel like scouting characters like that are really cool. They open up like a new type of play style, and I don't know. I feel like that would also even speed up like some of the end game where you're looking for that one solo wraith, just camp in that building like with fingers crossed, hoping they somehow win. That would be pretty funny.
It's really nice to have a Bloodhound. I had used Bloodhound for that challenge as well, and started. I wasn't a huge fan of Bloodhound initially, and Bloodhound really grew on me. Just like that tracking that you have is so good.
Dude, you know what that reminds me too? I was thinking a lot, like, because I mostly play. I watch other people play, and some people, you know, just I think in general the group that I play with on PC plays like ultra aggressive. Like we just run from gunfight to gunfight. That's like all we ever do. That's our thing. And so we tend to just focus on movement characters above all else. Like, you know, we'll even like double stack an Octane with the Pathfinder without even like a second thought, and maybe like a Bangalore in there. And I'm just like, man, you really do though. You miss out on a lot of other, you know, team comps when you play that fast. And it's not that you could ever stop people from like playing that way, but I would like to. That's the biggest thing I'd like to see them do in terms of changes, is to actually start looking at new ways to handle like the circle and stuff. I still feel like the circle's been the same since launch. I think the pacing of it could be changed. I think some of the circles are closed too slow, and I would love to see them start experimenting with larger player counts. You know, like fractionally. I imagine a lot of it's a performance issue. But like Blackout did, where they eased in more players, I just feel like the map could handle a few more squads, while also, you know, potentially tuning back or tuning the circle a little bit. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Like the general pace of the game right now?
That's been one of my salty things. So now that, do you know, are the challenges still going? Because I'm done at the battle pass, so I haven't really paid attention to that. But the challenge for like that you get, that was just temporary, right? Where you got like a level when you finished high, or is that still there?
I think it's still there.
Okay, so I've been noticing the pacing of the game. There's a huge like point where the whole map is a ghost town because people really want to get that like late game finish, right? So I'm noticing beginning of the game, it's always lit, it's always fun, and then like ring 2 is just like so slow because people are waiting for the gunshots. They're waiting to third party. It just feels like the pacing. I would love to see some kind of change. Maybe the ring forces the pacing to change. Maybe something to speed up the game a bit.
Yeah, I think just in general the ring is too slow right now. And I know like the ring is basically tuned to give you a certain game time. But like, when was the last time you ever had like a fight come down to like the circle's about to pinch, you know, everybody like into a 3-foot radius? It's super rare for that to happen because the player count's always really small, and also just kind of the nature of the game. But I think those early circles are really where like the problem lies, is they're set to like, you know, get you this 15-ish minute game time for the most part. And yeah, they're just way too slow at the start for a game where you can move so fast. You can cover so much ground in this game, and I love that. I think that's like one of the best things about this game, is that I never feel like I'm just running across big open wastelands. And actually, Monster Clip, who is one of the lead level designers over at Respawn, was talking about how they designed the maps. And I remember when I did my review, I was like, it's kind of like they made a bunch of team deathmatch environments and plugged them together. And apparently that's exactly what they did. Like, we made rooms, if you will, like, you know, Market's kind of like a room, and then Skull Town's a room, and we just connected them. I think that's great, but I just would love to see players get in the early game forced around a little bit more. And I think that's the sort of change that could come along really well with refinements to like their loot tables, because I do think that's something that still is very inconsistent. And I know that's always a difficult thing when you're just making like some sort of a random number generator to like decide where loot goes. But I just think there needs to be like a little bit of a refinement for what's considered like an early drop, like difficult to use weapon, you know? Like, is there any like certain weapon archetype you'd like to see more of in even mid-tier loot zones?
Man, it's so random. And I mean, yeah, because it's a BR, but I'd like mid-tier loot zones. I mean, maybe R3s more, maybe R99s more. I feel like it's such a trusty weapon, but
I'm thinking like even like alternators, you know. I almost would like to see them do. I mean, a lot of BRs suffer from this, and I've always kind of wondered like how it could go if there was like the archetypes of the weapons were kind of used to define, like, you know, the loot pools they exist in a little bit more. So it's like SMGs are no doubt like almost every gun in this game can be really powerful apart from like, you know, the pistols. So like alternator, R99. Like, there's no reason for me that those shouldn't be like more abundant in almost every zone. Like, why not let a player at least get one of those like almost essentially quote unquote guaranteed when they hit the ground. Like put them in more buildings in like the high tier loot zones, make them more popular. Just make the ammo like as scarce as it's been, you know, like 1 or 2 boxes for each weapon drop. Because they still have like no magazine capacity, you know, like the R99 doesn't really get good until you get a mag in it. It's a very difficult weapon to use with that stock mag. Like, I don't know.
18 bullets.
Yeah, you know, like it's just a buzzsaw. And like even when people don't have armor, you can really mess up and just dump all 18 of those rounds into a wall and not get your down. So I think that's just an area where the game, like, I'm sure it's one of those things that they've been actively looking at and seeing how it kind of pans out. I don't think it's terrible. Like when PUBG was like early days when I was playing, it was really bad. Like they took them forever to refine their loot table. I think it was probably 5 or 6 months before things like got pretty solid, where you would drop and you'd be like, okay. It's not one of those again where we just literally go to a place where there should be loot and there's like a backpack. It was really bad. This doesn't, I don't see that much in this, but I don't know. It's just, yeah, one of those things that I think if you're going to increase the circle, then in tandem you do need to like make sure loot matches that, because there'd be nothing worse than like dropping, you know, just outside the circle and within the first minute, I think, what is it now, like it's 3, like you get like 3 minutes once the circle starts closing, 3:30 or something like that.
Yeah, 3:30. Yeah.
Like if it was 1:50, you know, like my team better have gotten some decent loot, because now we're like running with the circle and looting's gonna be much harder. But maybe that's like what the game needs, you know, just a little more franticness in that early stage.
And the rings are so forgiving as well. Like earlier there was a fight in the caves, and the caves outside of Market, and I was like, you know what, I'm not facing that head on, I'm flanking around. It's only ring 3. I'm just gonna med kit anyway because it's not gonna kill me.
Yeah, part of me, I like that in the early rings. But I do like, so I guess if the rings closed quicker, it would probably be like less of an issue for me, like in the mid rings. But I do like that. That's like one of my favorite things about the game, is that in other BRs it's so easy to play the circle. You know, like in PUBG you can just play the circle, and if you're a decent squad, like you can win a lot because of that. But here there's that extra guessing game that you have to play of like, but they could have went outside of the circle. You know?
Yeah.
So it goes from like you having a guaranteed choke point, like using the circle to choke teams out for sure, like there's no way they can make it around that circle and survive, to actually they probably could have made it. You know? So like, how do we want to play this? I do really love that about this game. Like having played so much PUBG, it's just like it becomes a very formulaic way of winning in PUBG, is just always play the circle and just use it to create choke points. Not necessarily a bad thing, I just think it is better here. But I do think it is still a little too forgiving early game. Like the times I've seen people spend what seems like 10 minutes in Skulltown looting outside the circle, I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
And then they come out like geared out and we just get wiped out, and I'm like, okay, that kind of sucked. But
yeah, you can get away with it, especially if you have a lifeline on your team.
Yeah, you know, to just be in there, carry you guys. Man, I think one really small thing I've been thinking a lot about, though, when we talk like real tight refinements, is I'd like to see them like loosen up their movement a little bit. You know, like the slide mechanic is great, but especially on controller, I've noticed this. I just don't think you should have to sprint as long as you have to activate a slide.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's just like the number of times when I switch off of mouse and keyboard and go back to controller, the number one thing I do on a controller is I crouch way too early, and then I just like, you know, just do the squat like on the ground, like, oh, whoops, I meant to slide. Yeah. I'd like to see them like loosen that up a little bit. And I think it would be cool too if they kind of sped up their parkour system a little bit, you know? I just think in general, like, this could be a good combination, kind of what we're talking about with like the circle going faster, and just make it more of a fluid thing where players can kind of like hustle and bustle over small lips and edges. And I just think like there's ways you can make, you know, the game a little bit more movement focused without like throwing wall running in, you know? And I think that would start to make it feel a little bit more special, and kind of reward people on the higher end more than they currently are. Because right now I feel like high-end gameplay in this game is just based almost 100% around like aim. Like positioning matters, but people who aren't great at aiming can win via positioning. So like to me, being topped out skill-wise means that your positioning is great, your map knowledge is great, you know, the RNG comes into play, but then your aim is just like, if you've got that godlike aim, you know. So adding like that extra movement fray, I think would give people a new way to be in like the top tier. You don't have to necessarily be super good at aiming, but if your movement's good and you can really start to hustle and bust around like tight areas and, you know, make use of the slide a little bit more, I think that would kind of expand that top part of the skill ceiling.
And it wouldn't hurt anything, you know, like who is gonna have a problem with having more fluid movement?
Yeah.
Who's going faster? Are you thinking like faster mantling too?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, like I don't know if you ever played a game called Brink. You remember Brink back in the day? It was made by Splash Damage.
Yes, yeah, I remember Brink.
You know, they had like the 3-tier body system. So you were either like a really light character, a midweight, or a heavyweight. And when you were the lightweight, you had this really slick parkour system. So when you would go to mantle, it would just be a clean mantle where you wouldn't lose any momentum whatsoever. And I feel like if they went and did something like that with their mantle system over like lower objects, that would be cool. You know, that gives you like new opportunities to push locations where previously you'd be kind of like staggered making your way over like a really tiny lip and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I think it'd be great. I've died in mantle, like tried getting away and then you get stunned by like a spiff, because that heavy weapon stun.
Oh, the stun too. It's gotta go, dude. There's no reason for it, man. So there's one game in existence that should have stopping power, and that game is Gears of War. Gears of War, Lancer stopping power should have always have been a thing. When they ripped it out and they gave everybody the Nasher Fest, they completely ruined like the core community. And then when Gears 4 came out and they were like, you know, stopping power is back again, everybody was like, yes, like, you know, you should be punished for running out in the open with a shotgun and rushing someone down. This is not that game, though. The heavy weapon stagger to me is just mind-blowingly silly.
And why is it only on heavy? Like, I get the
It's
idea
only on the
of
most
it,
powerful
but-
weapons in the game.
Yeah.
Just rip it out, man. It should just be gone, dude. This is one of those games where I'm just like, you know, embrace your movement. Don't let players get staggered for anything. You know, if they get shot, let them just take the damage and call it a day. Like, I get that it's probably a system, you know, to just kind of compress the skill gap a little bit, but I don't think it's doing what it's you know, thinks it's doing. It's just letting good players punish the the players who are already struggling even more. Because if you land all your shots with that Spitfire, man, yeah,
they can't get behind cover either. They're
You're
just
done,
stuck in
dude.
the open.
You can't slide. You can't even get like enough sprint speed to go into a slide. Yeah, I think just remove all that stuff and clean it out, you know. And maybe none of it was even like intentional design. It could have just been like, well, this is what happens when we cut the movement speed of the game down and we remove wall running, you know. This is just kind of like the way things go. I mean, the stopping power is obviously intentional, but like everything that comes out around that because of that. So yeah, I'd be fine with them cutting that out of there.
And it's the fact that it's only on one style of weapon, and I don't know. It could definitely go without.
Yeah, I just don't like. To me, it's always like, as a player, anyways, I always ask myself, like, does it add any like value to the experience? Like, you know, what is the point of having heavy weapons stagger the player? Are heavy weapons somehow in a weaker position than every other weapon archetype in the game that they need that? And it's like, well, no. Just about every weapon in this game, for the most part, is on a pretty even playing field, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, obviously considering the few outliers, it's just no reason for it. It just, yeah. It seems like it triggers randomly, too. It does not seem consistent. And maybe I just don't get shot with heavy weapons enough, but the few times where I get shot with heavy weapons and I do get staggered, I'm just like, what is happening? Like, what is this crazy thing why did my characters get staggered, you know? I think I probably played the game for 40 hours before I even knew it was a thing. It just doesn't feel consistent when it does happen.
Yeah, it's really random, and it sucks when you're trying to slide to get behind cover and you lose it because you're stunned. So you just get caught in the open and get shredded.
Oh, yeah, see, I've never had that happen. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, it hurts.
Sounds terrible. Oh man, yeah, I don't really have too many other, you know, like outside of the obvious balancing fixes and things I'd like to see them make. I know right now too, it's nice to see them talking about like netcode. You know, that's something obviously the game could use some work on. It's too bad that like they couldn't have gotten the team that worked on Lawbreakers netcode and just like collab with them.
I heard that was the best.
Yeah, Lawbreakers got like glowing reviews. I know Battle Nonsense, when he did like the beta thing, and he had some concerns, and then when the full game released, it's still like, when you look at his list when he does netcode testing, Lawbreakers, unless he removed it, last time I checked, it's still there. It is #1.
Wow.
It is like,
that's awesome.
It was the best like just overall like netcode experience, I guess would be the best way to put it in terms of how he does like his reviews for it. And I just know that's like one of the hardest things to work on in games. It's never easy. It's never a one size fits all thing, you know. Maybe he couldn't have even helped them based on like their engine and their tech and stuff like that, but that just seems to be one of those things that will really hang with a game for a long time if it's an issue. You know, Rainbow Six Siege dealt with it for a long time before, and I think all they did really was increase like the tick rate of the servers. Battlefield kind of had a similar thing where it was like they just kept adding, like they improved the tick rate. Gears of War had terrible netcode for its first 3 entries. Like host advantage, when we used to play online back in the day for Gears, was like the realest thing ever. And it's such a crazy thing it's normal for me to talk about it, but if you like tell somebody who's like grew up playing, you know, Fortnite or more recent Call of Duties that you had host advantage, to be like, what does that even mean? And you're like, you literally did more damage.
Yeah, because you were host.
Because you were host, like you could just eat Nasher rounds and just plow through the team. It's like, it was so bad. Some of the tournaments I used to play in, we used to like, the rules were literally set so you had to swap hosts between rounds.
Yeah, yep.
Try and make it fair, and it's like
COD was the same way.
It doesn't work, man. It's not fair.
Yeah,
their netcode is not that bad, fortunately.
how difficult is it to switch up a netcoder, like servers and whatnot? Like I don't know much about that.
As far as
I know,
it's like
it
the
frustrates
whole
me.
server thing, right? That's just like servers, you know.
Okay.
And I know like servers are more of what is going to happen when you talk about like getting disconnected or having like moments where the servers are getting hit hard, like, you know, if everybody's playing on the weekend and you're like having trouble logging in, that's more server related. Netcode is like legit code that's been written, and then there's a whole bunch of other layers that go into basically like what I won't call netcode because there's more involved in it. That is like the online experience, and this is where you start dealing with like favoring the shooter. Overwatch did actually a pretty good video on this. Like their tech team talked about kind of how they do their system, which I think is theirs is like up there. You know, in terms of like what the internet might say is good netcode, the internet loves to, you know, scream big numbers, right? So they'll be like, but the tick rate's higher. But it's so much more than that. You know, it's not just the tick rate. And Overwatch had a very smart system that would always try and favor the shooter. So basically making sure that you never get punished for someone having a poor connection. And I think that's kind of where Titanfall always struggled, right? Like people with bad connections end up with a bit of an advantage. And that's just like a whole big thing of essentially making the game read those situations and then actually interact with that situation to make the outcome different than it would be. And that's where it gets like really complex and well beyond my understanding of the rest of it. But it's not an easy thing. So it's cool that they're working on it, and hopefully it's something they can clean up a little bit more. It's like, I get it. I don't feel like with this game there's enough moments where everything's just kind of out in the open that I don't feel it that much, but it definitely sucks when you turn a corner and like just face chunk a guy with half an R99 mag and you don't get any hit markers.
Yeah.
You're like, it's running a bit behind.
Yeah.
You come back and shoot this guy 5 minutes from now.
Yep. I've had my rage moments where I'm like, okay, you know, shot that guy with 30 rounds of a R99 point blank, you know, and whatnot. And yeah, I'm looking forward to them fixing it up. And I think that's going to solve a lot of people's complaints. People aren't happy with that. And yeah, whenever that gets fixed up and the bugs, I mean, I'm really excited. I'm optimistic to see what they can do.
Yeah.
They have the skills.
Yeah, and at this point too, I'm like, I feel like the next big thing for them is going to be whatever they do with Kings Canyon or then another map, right? Like, there's no doubt that they're doing something. It would be crazy not to, and knowing them, like, I just feel like that's one of the first big things they want to do. So I feel like season 2 could be like the real like dope, you know, kind of game changery one where it's like, oh hey, we just revamped Kings Canyon entirely. Check it out. We'll have to see how that goes.
I think people forget that like Fortnite's season 1 for their battle pass wasn't like crazy either. You know, like it's all a learning experience. You know, pushing it out and making sure things work. And I'm sure that's what this was meant to be too. Is just, you know, it's learning experience, seeing how the battle pass goes. Keep it simple at first, but I'm sure season 2 we're gonna get some amazing skins, some amazing gun skins, character skins, and different style of cosmetics get brought in. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they just decide this doesn't work at all. And they're just like, this isn't really like the way, it doesn't work for our team size. Community didn't like it. We didn't like it, you know? I mean, that's another thing too, right? I think like the consumer, the players often forget. They just think like, oh, it's just this company. And they're never disappointed with their own work. Like, I can assure you, they're always more disappointed than you are. Like if something goes wrong, you know, just like if somebody just makes, you know, somebody who live streams, if somebody who makes videos, like anybody who has any sort of passion in the work that they do. I don't care if you flip burgers. Like if you work at a place that makes really great burgers and you're passionate about it, then you know what it's like to be disappointed in your own work, and you know what it's like to be like, shit, that didn't really turn out the way we wanted it to, you know. So like they're aware of that stuff. Yeah. They're not oblivious to it. And I think for them it's always been like a you know, just like we said way back at the start of this discussion, it's always been like a team size thing, right? They've only got so much manpower, and they're just doing the best they can with it. I also don't like, maybe that's another thing too, I was wondering, like, could they potentially just really expand their team? But once you start getting into like really big team sizes, you know, there's got to be like effects, right, to like the end result, the creative vision that comes out on the other side of things, you know.
I'm sure, yeah. Like this team worked together in Titanfall. You know, they worked together on this. They had people in, and just like the chemistry will be different, and I'm sure it'll just be a different vibe all around, having different people in, regardless of like same mindset and whatnot.
Yeah, and really shifting. You know, like I imagine at that point you're shifting a lot of the things that you used to do as this tight knit team to like a much larger group, and things are kind of getting just passed along, you know, like, oh yeah, you got to work on that. And I've heard those sorts of stories from devs before where it's like, I don't know, I just work on my thing. Which is why it's always actually pretty impressive when anything like a film, a play, anything that involves like, you know, more than 20 people just doing their own thing comes together. Because like everybody was just kind of out there like, hey, I'm doing my thing, you're doing thing, and then one day they kind of mash it together and it's like video game, and it's like, oh
yeah,
that's pretty special. So yeah, I guess to sum up the Apex discussion, then, you know, we'll be here. Everybody will be here, man. All the people who are like, I'm done playing Apex. It's like, yeah, as soon as season 1, as soon as the L-Star drops, there's another legend drops, you'll be back, and you know, whatever big changes they make, they'll be back, which is why I'm happy to see them just being like, listen, you can leave, don't worry, I'll be right here making this game. Come back whenever we get new stuff in.
Do you ever feel like you know, like that negativity, or like, you know, let's say unnamed random creator, massive creator just says, you know, this game sucks, I'm done with it. Do you feel like that ever like puts pressure on them to like change things up or do stuff? Like there's like a strong arming by
it's
influencers?
Gotta have some sort of an effect, man. I mean, and I don't think they should let it, right? That's the thing, because I don't think it's just the influencers. It's like, it's the vocal minorities, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're a big part of that too, and I think that kind of goes with what we're talking about with like Fortnite, right? Where there's just this ridiculous demand for these teams to be forced to work these hours to get this content out. It's like, why? To please some people who are pissing on the internet? Like, fuck that, man. Enough. I mean, I feel like games, like entire game metas in multiplayer games and balances. You know, I feel like I experienced that with Gears when I was playing it a lot. Is like, it's just completely destroyed by the vocal minority, like these people who just kept whining on the forums, and it's like, dude, you know, they're not speaking for the majority. And then they make this change, and everybody stops playing the game. And it's like, yep, well, fuck, exactly. Man, I thought this is what everybody wanted. You know, this is what everybody said. I think Destiny faced that. Destiny has this huge splitting point, right, where you have this chunk of the community who, like, you know, who claimed that they wanted everything to just kind of be easier. But then you had this community who complained they want everything to be super hardcore. And Bungie's just kind of stuck in the middle, like, well, we've tried both and people are still complaining. Like,
you can't win.
Yeah. And I also think it's a shitty practice too, as like a big streamer, to just be like, this game sucks. Like, dude, have some like fucking, you know, you literally make a living like off of the games that these people make. You know, and I'm not saying that you owe everything to them and you have to pay them all this money, but have like a little bit of respect. You know, like, and just be like, and also just have a little bit more awareness to be like, or it's because I've played this game for over 3,000 hours in the past 6 months. Yeah. You know, maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe this game doesn't suck. And you see that with the people. I've already seen people like going back to PUBG, like personal friends even, who are like, oh, yo, dude, PUBG isn't actually that bad now, man. And I was like, dude, I told you like a month before Apex came out, like PUBG was in a good place. But like all they wanted to hear when they were playing Apex was like, no, PUBG shit, man. I ain't going back to that game. I'm just like, they could all be good. They can all be fun. They can all offer different experiences. One doesn't have to constantly one up the next, but that's how a lot of streamers and stuff like do that. And you know, Cheese It actually just said in chat, I honestly think there are streamers that just don't understand the influence they have, and I completely agree.
100%.
I mean, there are massive people, even like Ninja, who are oblivious to it. They don't even realize they're influencers. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
dude, you have an audience. You are essentially the modern day equivalent of a pop star, a film star. You're right up there. You are no different than them. You know, you are deeply influential.
They say a game sucks, and that leads to, you know, maybe, I don't want to say millions, maybe thousands, maybe hundreds of people,
maybe
that
millions,
now
man.
say,
I mean, look at what's her name, Gwyneth Paltrow, right? That crazy chick who plays Pepper Potts. She sells all that goop bullshit. It's all like that weird, crazy, loopy, homeopathic stuff, like shove garlic up your, you know what? And she makes millions of dollars every year on just selling people lies, you know? So it's like, is it, you know, at that point, is it that hard to believe that a bunch of kids will never play Apex again because Ninja was like, Fortnite is superior and Apex is hot trash? Not saying he's ever said that, but
no, yeah.
But you know, he has that sort of power, and we do live in a day and age where people are, it's just, you know, just the rapidness of life and just a lot of things, right? It's much more easy to just hear what somebody has to say and be like, well, that's the end of it. You know, there's actually a really good video that I think completely like discusses this point. And so when Dark Souls 2 came out, there was this YouTuber named Matthew Matothis, and he made this video only like 2 days after Dark Souls 2 released. He had played through like the thing and beat it, and he just tore it apart. It was just like, oh, Dark Souls 2 is terrible, nothing like Dark Souls 1. And that was almost always his argument, by the way, was that it was nothing like Dark Souls 1. And it's like, it's a sequel, it's not really supposed to be.
Yeah.
So this guy, H-Bomber guy, he does a lot of like response type videos and just kind of talks about like culture in general. He went back and was like, you know, here's my thing on why Dark Souls 2 is great, actually. And he uses that video as like this point, and like suddenly it's like super eye-opening to realize like, yeah, this guy really just didn't like the game because it wanted him to play differently. But at that point in time, everybody shared that guy's video, dude. It had like 1 million views in like a week. Total Biscuit shared it as like a quick way to be like, here's why I don't like Dark Souls 2. But in the meantime, professional reviewers, they loved the game, man. They gave it like all these high scores, and now people are going back and like talking about how great it is. You know, it's like,
yikes.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like, not every games journalist, right, is like, you know, is ever gonna be right. It's not a matter of right and wrong, right? It's a matter of opinion. But there's no doubt that there are people who are just more skilled at like having those sorts of discussions than other people,
totally.
Right? You know, but we live in an age where anybody can have a voice and not really respect like the power of that voice. I agree, which is why I have great appreciation for people like T-Rex and Gathalion and Broman, because they're very good at being like, I just didn't like it, but maybe you will. You know, I can't possibly. Broman and T-Rex refuse to ever give a game a score or to tell someone whether or not they should buy something. And it's like, unless the game has really bad business practices, you know, or, you know, it's doing something else awful that like no one should ever like support, you know, whatever, like some terrible hate crime game or some, you know, bullshit like that. They're just kind of like, you know, you're just gonna have to like figure it out for yourself. I'm not you, right? And that's not to say that game reviews shouldn't exist and that people shouldn't, you know, like have a strong opinion on things. I just think it's people being more aware of their influence, I think, is important.
Yeah, 100%. They're nice for references, but they're not like the be all end all.
Yeah, I mean, when you see people like on IGN stuff all the time, just like, oh, well, you guys gave this game this score, and now you're giving it this score. It's like you're just biased. It's like, no, it's just someone's opinion, bro.
Yeah,
that's it, man.
Exactly.
It's not that deep. It's not that deep. If it was, it'd be way easy to get rich because I would just take all the money in the world to write reviews about things. And just somebody would just be like, hey, play this game and say it's good for $1 million.
Okay.
Like,
I'm down.
It's like, oh, no one's doing that really. It's not how it works. And it's just opinions. And yeah, I don't know. People are just, they do, man. It's like when I was a kid, my mom, I think it's just one of those things too. Like it helps to have it kind of like ingrained in you earlier by the people around you, right? Like, you know, in general, like you, me, you know, Count, Butter, when we play things and we're like perfectly fine with being like, oh, you liked that? I hated that. You know, Derek and I do that all the time. I'll like love a game to death and Derek's like, God, I really hated that game. And I'm just like, I enjoyed it, you know? But that's like a problem. That's just difficult for some people, you know? I remember growing up as a kid, there was like a point where I had like a friend who was like real big into games and he had like all the hottest consoles and I just didn't. My family wasn't like wealthy as a kid. I got like stuck in a phase where I'd just be like, oh, but Nick said, and my mom used to be like, wait, but Nick said, or did you say? What do you think about it, right? And I think that's really important, like, especially with younger people, that we just kind of ask them that, like, okay, you don't like Apex, but why? I just want to know why you don't like Apex. You don't have to be like, Fortnite's better. Just like, what do you think about Apex? And if they don't have an answer, it's like, well, just go play it and tell me what you think of it. I just want to hear your opinion, you know? I feel like there's a different way you can go about those discussions with a lot of people, but yeah, it just, on the internet, just kind of turns into like ham-fisted, like, this game sucks, that game's good type thing.
Yeah, you like that game, you don't know what you're talking about, and vice versa.
Yeah, hopefully, it's like you just hope that people like with that sort of mindset grow out of it, because they're just missing out, right? Like, you miss out 100%. when you don't allow yourself to make your own opinions on things, and yeah, that's the way it is. But let's talk some other games. There's some really dope stuff coming out and stuff that already came out. Mortal Kombat 11. I've been playing a lot of that. I haven't been this into a fighting game since like Killer Instinct. I even like.
What are your thoughts on it?
It's so good, man. It's so good. Honestly, so the crazy thing about this game, and I'll throw these clips up real quick. The crazy thing about this game is like this is totally one of those like labor of love projects like from NetherRealm, and that like so this is a tutorial. The game has like over, so individually, it's over like 100. Like there's like a tutorial for every single mechanic in the game, but then they also have entire tutorial sections dedicated to like defensive play, technical play, offensive play. And so like the one I'm playing right now is focusing on teaching like crushing blows. This is like defensive and countering and stuff like that. It's super detailed. It shows you the button prompts on screen. It lets you do it in slow-mo, and then it lets you do it in normal speed.
Oh my God.
Like if you ever wanted to get into a fighter and like really you still have to put in the time. Like just because you run through all the tutorials doesn't mean, you know, you memorize how to do this stuff and can use it in a fight. But this game is just really fleshed out for that sort of thing. I've just been having like so much fun with it. And it's fun to like play a game where I'm like truly being put to the test in terms of like my ability to learn again. The shooters are just like playing shooters forever, you know? I mean, I'm sure you're the same way. You've been playing shooters forever. You just pick up a new shooter and it's like, okay, it just does this a little bit different. It's more about like a new meta, you know, and in like a new setting with slightly different like movement abilities. But a fighting game, like, you know, if you've never played one, is just like this daunting task of like, okay, I've reached the point where I can remember all of these button presses. Now to go online and actually attempt to do them under pressure while some dude is spamming fireballs at me, you know? It's just so different. And like every fight online is such a mind game of like, how do I beat this guy? You know, not like how do I play to my best, but how do I beat this person while also trying to play to my best? It's just such a different beast, man. Fighting games are like, if money is no concern for you and you don't mind like spending $60 on something that you might never play again, I feel like everybody should like try a fighter at some point and just like commit to it for even like a month. Like, you know, take like each weekend in a month and sit down and play like 3 or 4 hours of a game. Actually like learn it. Like if you really want a serious like gaming, you know, gamer cred challenge, this is like one of those genres that is like so good for you know, for like putting your learning capabilities to the test. I also think like, you know, as you get older, you don't like learn a lot of new things, right? A lot of people just kind of settle into their ways. Like, I can't cook, and so they never try to cook.
Yeah, and just give up.
Yeah, you just kind of give up, right? And so I feel like this is, I don't know. To me, it's like one of those cool opportunities, you know, if you're into games, to like play a game that looks wicked cool. Like visually and audio, from an audio design perspective, this game is unbelievable, man. Like, hold on, do I have a clip on here? Give me a second. Actually, I don't think I am.
Do you feel like this is a good like entry to fighting games because of the tutorials?
Yeah, not just the tutorials, but you get to play this like 4.5 hour story that's insane. Like like if you just want to watch a Mortal Kombat film while also playing Mortal Kombat, like their cinematics pretty much since Mortal Kombat, like DC Universe, they moved into Injustice and stuff, and MKX are just unbelievable, dude. You're just watching a film. It's just so good. So you get to do that while you're playing, the game. There's the tutorial screen actually. So this is what it looks like. There's literally just all of this.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to do.
Off of it like a fool. Let's find that again. The pause button. Yeah. So basic tutorial, and then there's all the stuff down on the side here. So you got your basic movement, basic combos, but then you move into frame data. It'll teach you about, which becomes much more important when you're kind of like selecting the characters to play. Advantage and pressure. There's character lessons for each character too. They'll show you how to. I think I've got one on here. Give me a second. This is Shao Kahn's lesson. He's my main right now that I've been playing. They'll even teach you about him. They'll say like straight out, like, here you go. Shao Kahn has a variety of aggressive attacks that are great for closing in on an opponent and pushing them to the corner. So that's kind of like how his play style is. Very aggressive, just pressure character, keeps pushing in the corner. And then it goes through and shows you every single ability And then if it can, it'll show you how to like amplify it with one of your meter burns, and then it just keeps going. It's like, okay, well then here's the shoulder charge, and then you can link it with this, and it just keeps going down.
Oh my gosh, I would get lost in this.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Which it doesn't take care of the really difficult part, which is like kind of like where do you start? That's kind of like where having someone who plays fighting games helps, to be like, listen, there's a lot here, just take it slow. But if you're willing to deep dive in and just kind of like go for it, it is without a doubt the best game, because even if you decide to never go online, all of the single player content is going to be worth your $60 for sure. It's just that good.
There's towers, right?
Yeah, those are kind of like they have like crazy modifiers and stuff on them. I know they're actually talking about like they're fixing. I guess the towers were kind of like randomly generated or dynamically generated, and some of the modifiers are really overpowered. But yeah, there's a lot of single player content. The difficulty of it varies, but you could always just hop into practice. I've played the game for 7 hours now. I've got like 2.5 hours online play, 4 hours separately with the campaign. That's not even a part of that 8 hours, and then like literally like 5 hours just in practice. Like you just sit there like learning, and like then you go online, and then you deal with somebody or spar with a friend. It's pretty dope. Strong recommendation from me.
Yeah, I'm interested. That might be the spark that I need, something completely different than I'm used to, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's it for me. It'd be like play a fighting game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like, if you're a competitive person, I mean, it doesn't get much more competitive than, just 1v1.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that. It'll definitely test you, like we were talking about earlier. I'm like, not wanting to get salty about games anymore. I just real kind of like chill about stuff. If I lose, I lose. It's not the end of the world to me. But man, let me tell you, you want to test your patience. Fighting games are the thing. They are the thing, because playing online against another person is just like, I don't know. It's a very personal experience, So when you start like losing to somebody who's just kind of like spamming you all day long, like this guy right here, for example. This was a Scorpion I was playing earlier today. And he was a real like two-trick pony, as I like to say. He'd just teleport, and then he'd use the same combo over and over again. And so I was down actually, like a lot. We ended up going, it's best of 5, and we ended up going like kind of all the way to the end. I had lost 2 rounds. He was our first to, best of 5. I had lost 2 rounds, and then I ended up making a comeback, just kind of like getting better at reading what he was doing. So this was like one of the first ones where I started punishing him. He just like, because that's what it is. It's just a mind game of like, you start off and kind of got to feel the player out, which is what makes fighting games cool, because rarely, unless the players are like way below your skill level, rarely are you just going to go in and like stomp on them. Like even if you stomp on them for the first 2 rounds or first 2 matches, there's a good chance that they're going to come back and be like, okay, well now I figured this guy out. And then you got to change up things. You got to stop doing, whatever. Maybe you were doing the same setup over and over again. And now it's like, well, okay, he's going to punish that. Like, I got to stop jumping in. I got to stop teleporting in. Like, see, he just kept trying to teleport, and I would always just block low. And he started grabbing then. That was his counter. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to grab. And then I was just like, all right, now I got to watch out for that. I either got to try and, like, tech it and counter it, or I just have to be quick enough to, like, not, shut him down before he even gets a grab off. And so I just started getting a little bit more aggressive then, and then just punishing, like, there you go. He's a teleport again. Got it on me. It's just such a mind game, man. It's so fun when you can just, like, chill out and just accept that you're not going to win everything.
Yeah.
And just appreciate like the unique experience you get of like going 1v1 with another guy. But
looks like it has like a chess vibe to it. It's like being a step ahead of your opponent.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Your combo and everything.
Yeah, 100%, just like getting a read on them. It's almost like you get to play like, imagine playing chess with one person for like a year straight. Right? Because after a while, like chess has so many intricate layers and like strategies you can use. But after a year of playing with somebody, there's a good chance you'd start to pick up on like some of the strategies they used, right? So it's kind of like a condensed version of that, where it's like within, the first 2 matches, you've kind of got to read on like what this person's strategies are, like what's in their tool belt, if you will. And so then it's like, okay, let me try and like read ahead of that and be one step ahead. And it's just like, it comes down to the wire. Like so much stuff, like, punishing someone when they're blocking is just something that has to happen in a fraction. It's definitely not the type of game you want to play when you're tired, because you'll just never punish and you'll keep getting wrecked, and you'll be like, all right, that's enough for tonight.
Yeah, I have a feeling. I think I'm gonna pick this game up. I'm interested. The tutorial thing that really I've been looking for something like that. Cause that always scared me about fighting games is like not being able to learn enough. Like I've never seen a tutorial like this advanced.
Yeah, they do the one for Injustice 2 is pretty good, but this is like they basically did double what was in Injustice 2. But yeah, I mean, I strongly recommend it. Like I said, even if you don't like end up getting into the multiplayer stuff, it's just absolutely worth it for like just the campaign and the experience of like playing a fighter, because it's just completely new. But let's talk Rage 2, man, because I know we're both excited for this. I'm like through the roof excited for Rage 2, man. It's not even. I got some footage from GameStop. They got to play it. I know like Cone Carnage got to play it. I've been watching them, and it just gets me more excited, man. It just looks like this ridiculous sandbox, dude. Like
all the special abilities and just the chaos,
dude. The guns, the different variety in the guns, the different enemy types, the environments. Cone Carnage got to do like he played a bunch of the vehicle stuff. And so when you're taking down, like, I don't know if you played Mad Max. I think we talked about this.
I did.
Yeah, you remember the convoys in that? They were pretty cool, but you had, like, no guns on your car, so everything was ramming based. Well, now you got guns. So these convoys have, like, these... It's almost like you're in, like, a shooting puzzle, where they have, like, vents that will open and expose, like, batteries and fuel tanks, and you kind of, like, drive around and, like, use your missiles, and your missiles deplete. You actually have to refill your ammo in your vehicle, so you can't just, like... It's not just a mashing. There's actually like a strategy layer to it. It just looks, oh god, I haven't been this excited for like a single player shooter in so long, dude.
Yeah, I'm hyped. Do we know anything about Doom Eternal?
Very little. As far as I know, all the stuff we know is the stuff we saw way back when.
Okay.
Just like, you know, they're adding some more movement stuff into this, and I kind of feel like Rage 2 is like, you know, is one of those games that feels like a very, very interesting culmination of probably everything that was happening at id, right? Where id was like, okay, doing this crazy partnership with Avalanche, which apparently, according to Tim Willits, Avalanche like made most of this game. Like, it helped with like the gunplay and stuff, and they did help like here and there. But this is like, at the end of the day, Avalanche was like the main like designers on the project and stuff like that. But it feels like when you look at, you know, Doom Eternal, that has like a lot of cool movement tech in it now. It's got like, you know, you can like swing from pipes and stuff like that. They've kind of got like the dash ability that this game has as well. It's interesting. I just feel like they kind of get like, you know, what's the next step for like, okay, we bring back the classic FPS, but now how do you make it more exciting than it was previously? Like we don't want to just do like Quake and Classic Doom where the characters run around 3,000 miles an hour through the levels and you just strafe jump and go hoof, 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 you know, everywhere you go. So like, what do we do? And like, oh, let's make crazy dash and movement abilities and stuff like that. So I feel like if Rage 2 is good, then Doom Eternal is probably gonna be sick as well.
Yeah, yeah, this looks incredible.
The environments are just like, I've only seen like 2 or 3 biomes apart from like the trailers, but they're just so lush, man, and like varied, and like there's just so much detail to them. And I know that's just kind of like the eye candy thing, but I feel like when you give the player like all these cool tools and stuff like that, you know, just like this junkyard, like where they're fighting the river hogs here. And this person's kind of just like at some crazy demo, I imagine, you know, and it's like playing on a controller on PC and not really knowing what the hell's going on. They just booted in the game. But I'm already seeing like possibilities like, you know, run through there, like whip a wing stick, jump up on one of the roofs, ground pound, switch to a shotgun, right? You could just like, you could turn it into this crazy like combo trick shooting fest. Like everything could just be, and I know a lot of people like to do that sort of with like Far Cry, right? There's a couple people who do like crazy stealth like outpost clears. So I feel like this is the non-stealth take on that, right? Like go do an outpost clear, but just get crazy and like fire rockets and grav launchers off all over the place and ground pound people's faces in. This is one of those convoys actually being shown right now. I think it's kind of crashed though. Just kind of blasting it, but
just looks like beautifully chaotic.
I think there's like a missile strike at some point. Yeah, this one.
Oh, that gives me flashbacks to Gibraltar.
It's just out of nowhere Gibraltar coming in. I love see this part right here. So like they're showing this kind of like canyon pass he's driving through. This is one of the things that gets me about games in general is I feel like a lot of games when they do open world stuff, right? Like I know a lot of it's like technical or just like whatever. It's just not important in the design. Like you never really feel like you're in like a tight jungle, you know, unless you're like walking in the middle of the jungle. Usually games you transition out into like a road segment and the road feels like it's massive, right? And you're just like, this is supposed to be a dirt road in the jungle. This is like one of the first games where I see a dirt road in the jungle, and I'm like, yeah, there's just overgrowth, like going over the side of the road and stuff, and he just happens to plow into this convoy and then obliterate them. Like, I'm totally there for that kind of random chaos. Just take that guy out, almost drive off the cliff. Yeah, it looks really good. What else? So Doom Eternal, I know that's like way out too. I feel like we don't. I know like everybody's saying this year.
Oh, what was it? Stadia. That was meant to be a launch title
That's
or
right.
something.
It's gonna be on that as well, yeah. So I wonder. I mean, it looked like really good when we saw it, but it's kind of an id thing, you know. Like that's why I'm really happy Avalanche teamed up with them, because Avalanche has always had an issue with performance on their games. Like Just Cause has always been plagued with performance. Even Mad Max is one of those games where it like runs good if you have a super beefy rig, but if you've got like a low to mid rig, it's like, it's not really that great. Yeah. And depending on like the GPU you have, it might be worse. Whereas this just looks, and as far as everybody who I've seen talk about it technically, that it just runs insanely well, like just maxed out. I mean, the game just looks absurd, dude. Like the number of like particle effects and like just the things happening in the environment, like the details with like, you know, the dirt and stuff kicking up. And I just feel like that's, you know, id games are just like that. Like Doom 2016 is just a game that runs ridiculously well for how good it looks on PC and even on console. So that's like, that was a good partnership. I'm glad that came together.
Agreed.
What was the last game we wanted to talk about? Days Gone, right? I pre-ordered that. I almost canceled my pre-order today because the reviews were pretty bad for it. But I kind of want to just play it for myself and see, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm like super curious about the motorcycle thing, even though I think at this point I've kind of decided like I'm going to play it just so I can make a video about what I'd like to see somebody do with like a motorcycle focused game. That's kind of the main draw for me, is like, as someone who grew up around bikes, I've always wanted to see a game that kind of like takes the bike and makes it like the center of like the action. Like, oh, you've got to like maintain this bike and like grow with it, but does it in a way where it doesn't feel like you're babysitting, which is unfortunately all I've heard about Days Gone, is that the bike's kind of just like an afterthought, like travel thing. Like it feels cool and it handles well, but it doesn't like tie into the gameplay well. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. But
how doesn't it tie in? Is it clunky? What's the?
I guess it's just the manner of like, it just literally feels like you only ever use it to go from point A to point B, you know?
Okay.
And there were a couple instances. So one of the reviews on VG 24/7 had a really specific moment where I got like really turned off, where he's supposed to be rescuing this girl, right? And so he rescues the girl, and there's a crap load of these zombies, or freakers as they call them in their game, like all around him. He's like, all right, well, I'm gonna use the bike. Like I got it fueled up, I parked in a good spot. We're gonna the bike, and we're gonna just make an escape for it. And he tries to go through this tunnel, and the game like just teleports him like out to the other side of the tunnel, kills him, and then loads a checkpoint, because apparently it wanted him to stop in the tunnel and kill the zombies that attacked them. Like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of giving you a motorcycle in the zombie apocalypse. Like, you should be able to pick and choose your battles, you know? The game's also been in development for like 7 years, which I just feel like it's one of those games that probably just had such a long cycle. I mean, some of the stuff to me, like design-wise, seems like real. That's probably going to be the most disappointing part of it for me, I guess, is like just when, you know, it plays like... So the biggest thing I saw is people are just like, it's kind of just like a reskinned Last of Us. In that, like, a lot of the mechanics are very similar. The stealth is very similar. And that's kind of what I saw when I watched it. It's one of those games where it's like every time I saw gameplay of it, I like liked the idea of a big open world motorcycle, but everything else seemed kind of like stagnant to me. And that's kind of what people have been saying about it. So I don't know. I'm gonna play it tomorrow, and I guess we can talk about it next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. I'm on the fence about picking that up too.
See how it pans out. Yeah, I'll let you know. I'll message you Saturday and be like, hey.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, if there's even, for me, open world games are just one of those things where I'm like, I'm such a big fan of them that if I can even like enjoy like, you know, just the base idea that they're trying to deliver, I'll usually be like, okay. I mean, that was like Mad Max, right? Although I think Mad Max is just a secretly like really underrated, underappreciated game. Whereas Days Gone might just actually be like a game that spent way too long in dev cycle and is now very dated. We'll have to see which it is. But yeah, I don't know. There's lots of cool stuff coming out the rest of the year. Just none of it has a release date, I guess, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, lots to look forward to.
But lots of dope indie games. Oh yeah, I played
Katana Zero, I know Derek's in chat. We both fell in love with that. That's like a game I strongly recommend on PC or Switch. It's like $15. I don't actually.
I've been hearing nothing but good things about it.
It's insane, dude. The story, the gameplay. You don't expect a game like that to have the story it had. Like Hotline Miami, you know, kind of had like a cool, like weird, like out there story, but for the most part, it was like Murder Simulator 3000. This is Murder Simulator like 3000, but it also has like a crazy story where you get to make like dialogue choices and stuff. And so it gets real twisted. I actually had, so I don't really drink a lot of coffee, and I haven't really drank any caffeine in probably 2 months. And so I get this nitro cold brew, drink it, and then I ended up playing like 4 hours of Katana Zero the one day. And then I went to bed, and I was like delirious apparently. Michelle says I woke up in the middle of the night like talking to myself, which I never do. And I was like, yeah, well, I was having this trippy ass dream, and it was totally like a dream that was all meshed into like the Katana Zero storyline, which is really psychological and like twisted and stuff. So yeah, the game was that good. This 2D side scroller had me like delirious and talking in my sleep. If that's not an endorsement, I don't know what else is.
Yeah, it's psychologically affecting. I'm down.
Yeah, strongly recommend that game if you want to have terrible nightmares. I think that about does it though, guys. Again, Count will be back next week. We'll be talking like St. Jude stuff, and yeah, man, we'll talk about Days Gone. And I don't know, if you end up picking up MK11, I'd love to hear you talk about that next week, OP. And
yeah, I might.
There's always stuff to talk about Apex. I haven't I know we really haven't thought about next week's discussion, but it's just one of those games that I don't know. There's a lot of things I still really enjoy about it that I feel like we just haven't talked about yet. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Candles, as always, thank you so much for the sub, my dude. Everybody else who came and hung out, thank you guys for spending some time with us today. If you didn't get to catch the entire show, it will be available as a VOD as Twitch does its thing. It'll also be over on YouTube tomorrow. I know Count's been doing reruns of it. OP, have you been doing any like reruns of it?
I'm gonna upload them all at once. I've been lagging on that.
Okay, gotcha. So OP will be uploading them. So you'll have like a billion places to watch this show, and we're looking into the whole podcast thing for those of you guys who want to listen to it on the road, and who don't want to have like, you know, your YouTube player open while you're doing it. That is gonna do it from us this week. Thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to head on over, give Count and OP both a follow. Check out what they're doing over on their Twitch channels, and we will see you all in the next one.